The Chargers released their new alternate jerseys on Tuesday with a ton of pressure on them. Once again, they hit it out of the park, and the navies they release could be the best jersey in the sport.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 10 seasons. This is our 8th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen. To make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Daniel, the Chargers finally did it. They released their new alternate jerseys, and my goodness, are they beautiful. The navy jerseys, to me, are the best jersey in all of professional sports. It is unbelievable, especially when you add that alternate helmet. That all navy look is just phenomenal. Fantastic stuff. Then we're also going to get into the biggest training camp storylines. Will Rashawn Slater finally sign on the dotted line? Jesse Minter in year 2. Is it going to be just as good as year 1? And we got to see which one of these rookies can take a starting role this season.
Yeah, and I don't think any single Chargers rookie goes into this training camp as a starter, which is how it should be. But they will have to earn it in this training camp. But today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. David, the Chargers released their new alternate jerseys. I'm sure everyone has seen them by now, a bunch of different combinations. But the big two that they released were the all navies, which are just, we knew there had to be some sort of navy, right? You're wearing, the Chargers throwback right now, basically. We knew they had to do something with that look just because it's iconic and it's one of the best ever. And then, so we got that, especially with the Navy helmet, like you said, which is just awesome. The Navy helmet with the, white bolt on it, it's just totally iconic. But you also got the yellow. So we'll talk about the yellow, because that was kind of one thing both of us were like, please no yellow. Please no main yellow jersey. But it's easy, David, to look at this and see what the big winner was, and that is that Navy jersey, going back to the dark blue helmet, Navy tops, Navy pants, really improving upon the Navy alternates they just recently went 0-6 with, right? Because they got back to the white on the sides. You have the all dark Navy helmet. You have the different kind of white on the shoulder pads and things like that too. Just a much more cohesive look, a great throwback look. And man, it just, even seeing just several pictures, just an insanely good job by the Chargers getting the navies in and doing it right.
Yeah, they definitely did it right. And I think for us, obviously growing up, watching LT, watching Junior Seau, watching, LaDainian Tomlinson, I think, these are the guys that made this jersey iconic, and, why it's so important to us, because it was the jersey that they wore when they were at their most dominant as a franchise. And, when they were just rolling into places, knocking people's heads off, running the football down their throats, and dominating week in and week out. And I think hopefully as they, don these type of jerseys once again, that they restore that level of prominence, that level of dominance back to the Chargers. And I think they finally have the head coach and they have the team to be able to bring back that type of level of play. And this is just a great look, and I'm really, really excited to see how they're going to kind of blaze a new path with the Navies, hopefully turning that into excellence and winning.
Absolutely. And I mean, Sean Merriman said it best. He said, they were so original and had a gritty feeling to them. We were going out there to run the football, play great defense, and hit you in the mouth. You were going to get 4 quarters of pure hell. That's it. That is what it brings back, right? And Jason Levine, super high up with the Chargers social media team as well under him, but just one of their big dogs basically put out that, hey, I would have liked to see some white in it, but that wouldn't have been a throwback to both of kind of the Navy teams, the ones in the Junior Seau era that had the Navy pants and the white tops, and then the LT where you got some of that too. So this was the best way to kind of bring it all together. And although I wanted the whites, this works, and it's so hard to be upset with because it's just such a good look. You see Derwin James donning that. You see Tarheeb Still and Dayon Henley doing throwbacks, a picture of Sean Merriman, like they're right back in the early 2000s.
Yeah,
so
man.
It was such a vibe. We know when they're wearing them. They're only going to wear them 2 games. I wish they would double that at least. It's going to be week 18 or week 8 Vikings on Thursday Night Football and week 13 against the Raiders. But just absolutely crushed this look. This, puts them up there. The best uniforms in the NFL got better because they have this one in the rotation now. But let's talk about the yellows. We were both pretty adamant about not wanting a primarily yellow jersey. And credit to the Chargers, because I thought I would hate them, and I don't, man. Like, I don't know if it's the powder blue accents they have on it. He did say, Jason Levine, that the Chargers can alternate socks too. They can go with the white socks with them, the powder blues, or they'll just go gold on gold. But, man, seeing Derwin James in that all-gold jersey, like, they can pull it off, and it was such a risky move. They are jerseys that are quite unlike any other jerseys that are out there in the NFL. They're totally unique, which I think is something that they were going to, and also them trying to pay homage to the Air Coryell days, the late 70s and early 80s, where they didn't have yellow tops back then because they've never done that in franchise history, but that was a big part of the vibe then. That was a big part. They had, the royal blues with the yellow pants, and the yellow pants never really fit until really this look. Like, this is the best look with the yellow pants we've seen from them so long, probably since the Color Rush jerseys, but I don't hate them, David, and I think that is a win. They've grown on me a little bit already, but seeing some of the players and how they looked in them, I don't hate it.
No, yeah, and I also don't hate it, and I thought I was going to. I mean, going into it, I was like, there's just no way they can do a yellow or a gold. I just don't want any part of it. I just think it's going to be a horrible look, and maybe that's because at some point in high school, I wore yellow baseball pants to baseball practice and got made fun of relentlessly for it. So,
it's a polarizing look all over social media.
It is,
you had
for sure.
NFL memes, saying who wore it better between Justin Herbert and Big Bird. So it's not for everyone. But to try to pull that off, and I think to do it somewhat successfully, says a lot.
It is for sure. And I will say that I really do like the powder blue trimming around the numbers, around the bolts on the shoulder. I feel like that definitely makes it pop and makes it really stand out. And it is a jersey that I wouldn't mind. Now, would it be nice to have the white pants to go along with it to kind of offset it a little bit? Yeah, I think that there's an argument to be made there, but there's so many different combinations that they can put forward with these jerseys. I don't hate it, and I don't know, maybe in the near future, I might have to pick one up to match with my all yellow hat, of course.
I mean, we knew you'd have a hat to match with it for sure, but this one is only, if you hate it, you're only going to see it one time this season. It's going to be week 7 versus the Colts. It'll be interesting. I don't know exactly which Colts jersey they're going to wear for that, but they said the game is going to have a 70s or 80s feel, even with, uniquely designed end zones to really kind of represent that era. So I think that will be cool, especially if it matches well with kind of the vibe. That has to be a very specific matchup, even on the other side, to pull off the all gold, right? But what also came with this, and we didn't really know, was just kind of new combinations, including the addition of powder blue pants, which I didn't know I needed, David, but I absolutely needed. I think one of the best looks, maybe the second best look behind the Navy, is the powder blue pants and the white tops. Man, I am all in on that one. That is such a good look that we now get to see.
It's such an icy look, man. Like that one right there, I was like, oh yeah, that right there works 1,000%. And also, I'm not gonna lie, I like the powder blue on powder blue too, man. Like that looks really, really good. I mean, we already love powder blue. You can't really go wrong there. But to be able to add that with being able to add, different color socks to go with it, there's so many different ways that they can make these looks just stand out and pop and be the best jerseys in the NFL, and that's what exactly they are.
Yeah, and like the thing is they've historically had the best jerseys in the NFL, but like as we saw in like the 2010s, right? Like it isn't impossible to mess it up. Those are my least favorite of like the recent memory jerseys that they've had. And to have kind of already the best and basically be tasked but by not only don't mess it up but make it better, super hard to do. But the whites with powder blue pants, the all powder blues, we're going to see some really cool looks from the Chargers this year. And when you have the color scheme that they have, that's all you want to see is what they can do with it. And I thought overall they really hit it out of the park and gave us some really fun new combinations and the ones we absolutely needed, especially with those navies to throw it back to, our favorite time in Chargers history. But we still have more to get into because training camp is starting tomorrow, right? When we'll have a live show after Chargers training camp tomorrow. So the show won't come out in the morning because we will have to talk about day one and we want to go live for that. But there are a bunch of big storylines, including will Rashawn Slater, will Trey Harris get those contracts signed soon? We're getting into all that and more. Today's Locked On Chargers podcast. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're talking about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. This is a huge weekend in golf. I know it's slow in some of the other sports. We just had the MLB All-Star game. But the Open Championship is going down this weekend, and Scotty Scheffler is going to have something to say about it in a major, and you can get him at plus 450 to win. But if you wanted to go a little longer odds, you get someone like Xander Schauffele at plus 2,500 to win the whole thing. Betting on golf is great. It's going to be a great major this weekend. And whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet right into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm part of the action. And if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. David, now it's time to talk about the camp storylines. We talked about the biggest offensive and defensive battles so far this week and talked about a lot of those storylines, but there were some that didn't necessarily fit into camp battles specifically that we have to get into. And one of the biggest things that still kind of looms over this team as they enter camp is Rashawn Slater, your all-pro left tackle, and the extension that he has not signed yet. So he didn't seem concerned about it. At the same time, I would be surprised to see him out there doing anything physical, any way he could potentially hurt himself until that extension gets signed. How long will it drag out? Hopefully not long, because this is the time of the offseason, David, where we usually see these things get done.
Yeah, and as we've said multiple times, like this is going to be a massive contract extension. I mean, if you look at the top 5 highest paid left tackles in the league, they are making anywhere from $22 to $27 million per season. So if we stretch that over 4 or 5 years, we're talking $100 to $130 million of overall money here. So yeah, there's a lot that has to be worked out. There's the guaranteed aspect. How long is this contract going to be? There's a lot of really heavy, significant details that have to be kind of ironed out here. But yeah, this is the time that you have to get this done. And as the days go by, and as we get closer and closer to actually playing meaningful football, you don't want anything to get in the way of your blindside protector being on the field to protect your most valuable asset, which of course is your superstar quarterback, Justin Herbert.
Yeah, this is right around the time historically we saw deals like a Derwin James deal get done. We saw a Joey Bosa deal and a big extension get done, both the guys for their second contracts. Missing time with a new offensive line isn't great. He could have a new left guard next to him, but unfortunately, that's not the only holdout that we have to worry about. And man, it felt like it would be. I don't know who else would have held down if it wasn't going to be.
Yeah, I didn't
Rashawn
foresee this
Slater.
one at all.
But that's not the only very impactful holdout they have, because Trey Harris, their second round pick, along with 30 other second round picks, is still unsigned at this point. Now we're about to get training camp with the big dogs and guys like Justin Herbert getting out there and slinging it. And one of the biggest storylines and questions we have going into this camp is, when will Trey Harris get back?
Yeah, as opposed to the $100 million or more that Rashawn Slater's in line to receive, we're talking about $7.8 million for Trey Harris. And the whole argument here is 2 of these second-round picks have already signed and got their contracts fully guaranteed. So now the rest of the second-round picks are like, well, I want that same thing. And I mean, from a business standpoint, you can't really blame them, right? I mean, there's been a small precedent that's been set. How much are the Chargers and all the rest of the organizations kind of going to dig their heels in and try to prevent this from, being a new kind of, expectation or a kind of a set of rules that the league's going to continue to go by, because that's usually what happens, right? When something like this happens, then it starts to become commonplace in the NFL workforce. So we'll see how long this drags out, but the longer it does, the more detrimental it's going to be for Trey Harris and for the Chargers offense as a whole, as he factors to be an important piece of this offense this season.
Well, and he's kind of unfairly getting singled out right now just because he's the first one that actually has a training camp to go to. So
of course.
We haven't seen yet whether these other second-round picks are going to be willing to, hold out. And it might not even be a fully guaranteed contract that Trey Harris specifically is looking for. But what you need when you're hammering out these contracts is to know what the players around you are getting in guarantees. So even if it's not 100%, hey, the guy in front of me got 95%. I need at least 93%, whatever the case is. Once those dominoes start to fall, it should happen pretty quickly. They just haven't yet. And it sucks because this is a chance for him to get a ton of snaps at the starting X receiver role with Mike Williams out with an undisclosed injury. So that's the part of things that will actually factor into how quickly this offense can get everything in sync. And I think that is just the other kind of looming storyline over this training camp, is how much will the offense be affected by the missing players? Because David, obviously we know it's the two receivers, two of Justin Herbert's top four receivers, not barely arguably. It'd be hard to argue either of those guys, Mike Williams or Trey Harris, isn't a top four receiver for him right now. But also Najee Harris with the firework incident, right? Also Rashawn Slater, your left tackle, out. All of these one guys necessarily aren't a huge deal, and you can kind of work around it. When you're talking about four hugely impactful players, or at least four players you expect to get big impacts from being missing as this, offense is trying to get started in year two under Greg Roman, it's impossible not to wonder how much of an effect it'll have on this offense and how quickly they can start gelling.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to find that symbiosis of what your offense is going to be, or what you want it to be, without having the key kind of components of that offense on the football field to be able to figure that out. You expect Mike Williams to be a factor, a guy that has some chemistry and trust already with Justin Herbert, and Trey Harris, a guy who, we know that the Chargers need more guys that can beat man-to-man coverage and just, be a playmaker. And that's what he has been, at least as far as his college career has shown us. And so we're hoping that manifests itself at the NFL level, but you can't do that if you're not on the field. And Najee Harris, we know that's part of the identity of what the Chargers want to do, is bring that physical aspect of it. A guy that is a bring your lunch pail to work, a guy that's never missed any time. And then you get to the Chargers and you're dealing with the superficial eye injury that we don't know how long it's going to keep him out of training camp. So it's hard to be able to figure out, okay, what of all these elements that I brought into the fold, what is that going to look like here when they're not on the field?
Especially when the offense needed to make big improvements after the way their season ended last year, and kind of just throughout the season, Ladd McConkey being really the only super threatening weapon that they had at all, right? At running back, at tight end, at wide receiver. The only true kind of elite threat that they had was Ladd McConkey. They knew they needed to add to that and give Justin Herbert more options. And now it just seems like it's going to be harder for those things to kind of click early on in training camp, and for them to really be able to get things going, and for Trey Harris, trying to win a starting spot, because that was absolutely on the table for him, and still is at this point. Justin Herbert's not out there yet, right? Things will get a little bit more real in the next coming days, but with Najee Harris of it all, right, you are really hoping that this rushing attack gets way better in 2025. That will be the crux of what determines how much better this offense will be. It's not the only factor, but it's the biggest factor, and it's the easiest place that they can improve, because they were in the cellar and have a chance to really up those numbers and their efficiency in 2025. How good of a look can you get, with Najee Harris in the backfield and no Rashawn Slater, right? Like, without both of those guys. Like, yes, we'll still have Marion Hampton, but like, everything's a little different, because it might be Bradley Bozeman, who's now having to, combo block with Trey Pipkins at left tackle while you're waiting for Rashawn Slater to get back in front of Marion Hampton. So you just wonder how much all of these things in totality, the combination of the four guys is going to impact how much this offense can improve right away, or just how much, these guys who were expected to be big impact players will be able to show that in a Chargers uniform. But we still have more to get into, including the excitement we have around what Jesse Minter can do with this group. There's an argument that nobody did more with less than he did last year. Now he has a new group, but the good news is, unlike most coordinators, he will actually build the defense around the players that he has. And we'll also talk about the rookie players, the draft picks specifically, who will go into training camp having to earn a role from themselves, and much more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. David, we still have much more to get into because we still have a lot of really important storylines going into camp. There just is. There's Rashawn Slater, the contracts and all of those things, but there's also just a bunch of questions that we have, specifically about the defensive side, who may have beat up on some bad quarterbacks and some bad offenses last year, and has a little bit of, turnover with big names like Joey Bosa and Poona Ford leaving. Now, at the same time, a lot of those guys were really elevated on the defense last year with what Jesse Minter can do. Now it is a new group, but I do want to tell everyone that the NFL Locked On Top 100 is here, voted on by the Locked On NFL host on the Locked On Podcast Network. Our Top 100 was formed by the experts who cover those teams every single day. Find the full list on Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast from, and see which Chargers made it on the Top 100. I know we had our nominations, and we had some of them higher than where they've been so far on the NFL's Top 100. I will definitely say that. But let's get to Jesse Minter, David, because he is a guy that really overachieved last year, was lucky enough to stick around after really having that incredible performance he did with that defense last year, leading them to being the #1 scoring defense in the NFL after 3 years of terrible defense under the defensive guru, Brandon Staley. But now it's about what he can do with this unit, David, and this will be our first chance to see, and for him to see, honestly, right? Like, he has to see these guys out there before he truly knows kind of where the focus should be on this defense and what their biggest strengths are, so that he can lean into it. But that all starts right now with training camp coming up tomorrow, and that's one of the things I'm most excited to see.
Yeah, a great inaugural season in the NFL for him as a defensive coordinator. Just fantastic results. Being able to take, a team that he mostly inherited and turn them into one of the best, scoring defenses in the NFL, depending on who you ask there, Daniel Popper. But the Chargers, the one thing that gives me confidence, not only is Jesse Minter, in his system, a lot more digestible to the players, but I'm a lot more confident in his coaching staff, the staff that he assembled at every level. Whether it's the secondary with Steve Klinkskill, whether it's the linebackers, or whether it's the defensive line, I feel very confident in the position group coaches that they have at all of those levels to be able to maximize the talent. And they're going to have to do that this year because they're going up against the gauntlet. We're talking much, much better, higher level playing quarterbacks, much more dangerous wide receivers, a lot more to contend with this year with the schedule that they're going up against. We're going to be able to see the real test. Like, was it a fluke in year one, or was this Jesse Minter just saying, hey, I'm here, it's my time to shine, let me show you what I am capable of doing? And I think year one gave us some confidence, but if he does it again in year two, then it'll be something that's understood.
Absolutely. And you look at it, Navarro Bowman unquestionably elevated that unit last year and turned what was a potential big weakness into a strength for this defense. Mike Elston, what more can you say about that dude? He was insane, and so was Steve Klinkskill on the back end, especially with what those corners were able to do. 5th round picks included in Cam Hart and Tarheeb still. So you look all around that. Maybe like a Dylan Roney, that's your edge rushing coach. Maybe doesn't have the same, cachet as like a Mike Elston. We'll see what someone like an Adam Fuller can do, right? Replacing Chris O'Leary, who did an excellent job last year. But you're talking about a team that got meaningful snaps out of Eli Apple middle of the season. Meaningful snaps out of Marcus May, right? In the middle of the season, who stepped in and got an interception in the first game that he played. But the best work he did was with the cast-offs from other teams, like Christian Fulton, cast off from Tennessee, along with Elijah Molden, who they traded for a bag of chips.
Yeah.
Poona Ford, who was a healthy scratch in more than half of Buffalo, a contending playoff team's games the year before he ended up in Los Angeles. So I think that's what makes you so excited about this, as well as, hey, he got contributions from rookies and cast-offs and guys who were kind of written off, and also when he needed to just bring in guys off the street, the way that this coaching staff got them integrated, got them up to speed, and got them playing meaningful snaps, man, like, so impressive. And you can't wait to kind of see where they specialize this year and kind of where they feel like their biggest strengths are. But another thing that training camp brings is a chance for rookies to show that they deserve a role. Because as I said at the start of the show, I don't think a rookie goes into training camp with a starting role. Any of their picks, right? Amarian Hampton, Trey Harris, Jamaree Caldwell, Kyle Kennard, Keandre Lambert-Smith, you name it. I don't think any of those guys are guaranteed a starting role, or even that, go into training camp with a starting spot to lose. Every single one of these guys, David, it starts now, has to go and try to earn that role.
Yeah, I mean, and there's guys, in these picks that have a better chance than others, just depending on where they're at positionally, right? With
Amarian Hampton probably is the
he's got a really good shot.
I mean, right now, how could he not be? Like, unless it's Kamani Vidal or Hassan Haskins, like, Najee Harris isn't out there to be a starter, and he would be the top competition.
Exactly. So yeah, with him, with Trey Harris, whenever he gets signed, he'll have an opportunity there. Yeah. I think Jamaree Caldwell, if he's able to kind of show some pass rush ability, he can really carve out some significant snaps. I think we already kind of see the size and the nimble feet and how that applies to being a run stopper and taking up those double teams. But if he can show some pass rush upside and replace some of that the Chargers are losing there, that could definitely earn him some more snaps. KLS, very rare opportunity, obviously, with two wide receivers that are not currently on the football field or at least not scheduled to be. Big chance for him. Aronde Gadsden, can he be that, pass catching tight end, that guy that's going to be able to create explosives in that game? The more plays that he makes, the more opportunities he's going to get. That's just the facts of the matter. But I think when you look at, a position group like the safety room or like the edge rusher room, I think Kyle Kennard, his pathway to starting is pretty much non-existent up to this point, barring any injuries that may or may not occur, knocking on wood here. And I think also Triquez Bridges, another position group with the corners that's just loaded a lot of bodies there. I think it's going to be hard for him to be able to break that starting lineup.
And that's the thing, right? Not all these guys are fighting for a starting job. Like, that's a distinction that has to be made there, right? And a lot of these cases, Kyle Kennard, it's how much can you be trusted? How much of a snap share can you get because they like to rotate their edges? Yeah. How much can they trust you on the field? And then you have, Aronde Gadsden, where to me, it's not as much about him making explosive plays in the passing game. It's about him showing this team that when the pads are on, he can make a difference. And I think that's the exciting part about training camp, too, is just seeing these rookies in a super competitive environment for the first time, playing alongside veterans of the NFL. Because when you're out at camp, I'll tell you, you can know pretty quickly physically the guys that belong, the guys who move a little bit different. You can find that out, and that's one of the things that training camp brings, especially for the rookies, to get to see that. But the fact of the matter is, all of these rookies are going to have to be super impressive if they are going to have roles on this team or starting roles specifically. But for some of them, like a Triquez Bridges, even maybe an RJ Mickens, even a Branson Taylor, because we've learned nothing about the trench guys so far. Yeah. So that's why training camp's important too.
For sure.
Can those guys just make the team? Because for some of these guys, that is what the goal of it is. Because there's going to be some undrafted free agents out there who are also going to be coming for those spots, David, because every year we have someone who turns into that training camp darling. Who do you think that could be in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's three guys that come to mind as far as the undrafted free agents that I think could really, make some hay and make a name for themselves. Rocket Sanders, obviously, I think he's going to get a ton of carries, a ton of opportunities. He's got that bigger profile that we know the Chargers like. Steve O'Klotz, we've talked about him ad nauseum, a guy that once the pads come on, he's going to show that physical aspect that he brings to the table. And another guy here might be a little bit under the radar, Luke Grimm, the wide receiver. I think he's kind of Ladd McConkey light, a smaller, quicker, faster, more precise type route runner. I think he could catch a ton of balls in the preseason, and it might make things a little bit interesting. So I would take a look at those three guys as far as going into training camp.
Yeah, I mean, Luke Grimm's a great guy to call out because there's always, one receiver that ends up having to get all those targets and coming away, with a chance to make the roster. And, in cases like someone like a Michael Bandy, we've seen it done before, right? But I like the Rocket Sanders one specifically from the standpoint of, at least with the Chargers, we've seen that position be able to show something in training camp and make it as an undrafted free agent. Not only someone like Austin Eckler, right, who turned into, dare I say, top 5-ish running back in Chargers history, potentially, right? I mean, probably right around there. But also guys like Brandon Oliver, right? And other guys who came in as undrafted free agents, were able to make some splash plays, show what they can do in training camp, and then ended up making the roster for a team in a franchise that historically has one of the more, impressive lists of undrafted free agents that you're ever going to find out
No
there.
doubt.
Starting with a gold jacket Hall of Famer in Antonio Gates, who came in as an undrafted free agent. But it didn't stop there. Malcolm Floyd, Jaleel Adai, Austin Eckler, just to name a few of those guys who made major impacts after coming in and not even getting drafted. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. Again, a little bit of a different schedule. We want to be able to do a live show after the first day of training camp and the second day of training camp. So usually we wouldn't be able to talk about the practice on Friday because we don't do a show on Friday nights. That means you're not going to get a show tomorrow morning, but you will get a live show tomorrow night talking about day 1 of Chargers training camp, and a live show on Friday night talking about day 2. Then we'll be back on Monday to recap the other days over the weekend that we don't get to talk about. But super excited. Training camp is upon us, and that means we'll be covering actual football for the most part and really important things as things start to heat up here. But to make sure you don't miss it, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from, as well as finding all of our posts in every time we're going to go live, every show that we put out on all of our social media, at Locked On LAC on Twitter, at Locked On Chargers on Instagram, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. If you want to hit us up for a fan show that we'll probably do next week with training camp starting this week, tell us about the jerseys, tell us about your training camp storylines. You can also call into the voicemail line at 323-524-7924 and give us your 30-second Chargers voicemail there. But make sure you guys are back with us tomorrow night for our live show recapping the first day of Chargers training camp. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.